I think you need a Tommy gun sound.
I should have that, but I don't. But I did get a couple of other ones.
Oh, yeah?
Did you get naked?
No. What?
So you just looped me?
Did you get naked?
That's, okay. Anyway.
Perfect. Any other ones?
Podcast! This is a podcast!
Did you get naked?
Stephen Marks, Unnamed Podcast is live right now, but not live.
You have a name now.
I know, but you told me that you didn't like the new intro, and I hadn't recorded a new one.
Wait, so you took it to heart? Damn it.
Yeah, well, I went back to the old one because you said it had more soul.
It did have more soul.
I agree,
but the other one was just refined. You timed it nicely.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're not there yet.
Okay.
We need a new intro, and that's not it.
This is a process.
Right, it's a process, and neither of those are it.
Did you get naked?
No, again.
Topic of the hour today.
Did you get naked?
Exactly.
Yeah. Then there's,
I was waiting for that one.
And then, so I grabbed a couple of things. So we did 3 podcasts last recording. Third one, we were both a little too drunk.
I don't know, dude. I think we talked about some great architectural stuff, man.
Oh, yeah? Draw a pocket. Somebody else draws a pen.
Steve, that's very Adolf Loose. Adolf Loose.
Did he draw pockets places?
I
don't
He used
remember that.
architecture as an ornament. And that's what I'm getting at, that by drawing something on a building, it's going to be ornamentation. Where's your pocket pretender?
So, those were some of the highlights from the last episode, and now you know why I haven't posted that.
I figure. I feel you. But I thought we had a great discourse about Peter Zumthor.
Did
you re-listen to it?
Yeah, we did, and it was just, it was a bad look. We were both just like drunkenly slurring through it, and I think it was a really great conversation to be in, but not to listen to.
Fair enough.
So.
Yeah, I think we're just really talking about general stuff without being very specific and being like drunk architecture.
Yeah, exactly. We were just being drunk fanboys. Okay. So I just kind of cut it out.
Yeah.
I figure
it's my favorite topic,
I figure we can do better. We can talk about it when we're like coherent, making points. All right. Anyway.
Okay. Well, that was Architecture 1, so I figure Architecture will have its own series,
Yeah. I mean, we can I feel like that's going to be a common theme.
Excellent.
When it comes up. So, speaking of themes.
Speaking of design, just want to share this Kickstarter project. We're in no way, shape, or form related to them or trying to advertise for them, but they kind of have an interesting project, and I think they're doing really good work. They're, pioneering in robotics and design and using rapid prototyping methods for fabrication.
Okay.
So if you want to...
Yeah, I haven't seen this. I'll post the link.
Hi, Kickstarter. This is Yuan, desktop 4-axis robot arm powered by Arduino. It has a parallel mechanism that is inspired by the ABB industrial pallet pack robot. The U-arm has 4 degrees of freedom and laser-cut parts made from acrylic or wood. There are 3 servos on the base to control the main movement of the arm, and 1 mini servo on the top to move and rotate an object by using a gripper or a vacuum cup. The vacuum cup would have enough power to lift and move a full can of soda. With our Arduino-compatible circuit board, coding can be made much easier with the Arduino IDE. Besides writing codes to program it directly, the embedded inverse kinematics algorithms we wrote for the U-arm enables it to be controlled by setting the X, Y, and Z coordinates, instead of controlling the servos directly. Our algorithms also make mouse and keyboard control possible. We have already developed a Windows application, and we are working on the iOS and Android apps as well, so you can control the U-arm with your phone. So no matter if you're a programming master, a keen parent that wants to get your child interested in robotics, or if you're just a robot fan who doesn't know where to start, the U-Arm is a great way to learn about robotics. We want to share the design and experience to people all around the world. So after the Kickstarter campaign in May of 2014, all the design files, both hardware and software, will be released to the public. The next version will be stepper motor driven, and thus it will be more accurate. We will add remote control function on PC and smartphones as well. All of this cannot be done without your support. Your funding, we can make the U-Arm better, cheaper, and more easily accessible. We are the U Factory, and we thank you for your support.
So, just for a little bit of clarification, do you know what 4-axis, 4 degrees of freedom is, Steve?
Are you talking about in like robot arms and stuff like that?
Not in robot arms, just in general, 4 degrees of freedom, what that entails.
I don't think I know what you're talking about.
So there's a total of 6 degrees of freedom. Obviously there's X, Y, Z. So being able to move
like
along the
pitch
X.
and roll and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I'm familiar with that.
And then the other 3 are rotations along the X-axis, rotation along the Y, and a rotation along the Z. So if you have like a satellite, you have to take all 6 into consideration. So this has 4 degrees of freedom, so X, Y, Z movements, and it has 1 rotational axis.
Right.
So it's probably one in the Z moment.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So I think this is really great. It's a nice little desktop robot.
Yeah.
But
well,
what would you be using it for?
Okay, well, I guess I have some input on this a little bit. What I would use it for is to build a building.
Okay.
It would lay bricks for me.
Okay.
And it would make it so that you could just set like an automated robot to go and build, lay your mortar and build out of bricks or whatever, and you'd have really great control, and you wouldn't have to try to find craftsmen who could, put your stuff together, because more and more it's really hard to find a craftsman.
They took your job.
Well, I mean, I think with the state of construction in America, at least from my perspective, is you either pay a ton to get a craftsman, or you pay somebody who's basically an unskilled laborer for all intents and purposes, to kind of slap it together, and if it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, we'll fudge it.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll fudge it on the corners,
Yeah.
So if you really want something precise, this is an attractive option. This reminds me almost exactly of a robot that we had in this technology lab in middle school. It was donated by Sandia Labs. It was like an ancient robot arm at the time, and all it really did was, essentially this kind of stuff. It had, I think, a little more movement, but the thing that was cool about it is it was a real deal robot. So if you programmed it wrong, and the programming it was incredibly difficult. You had to actually script in what you wanted it to do.
As middle school kids?
Yeah, I was the only one who got to use it because it came with no instructions, and I don't know why, but the tech lab teacher was like, "You're
white.
You're cool." Like, I don't know. I don't remember what I did to distinguish myself, but essentially myself and Ian LeBlanc got to be like,
we're name dropping now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when it's a positive thing.
Okay.
We got to be sort of like teachers' aides, but not really. So we just kind of got to do whatever and figure out stuff, and then we wrote like little manuals of how to put the laser kit together or whatever.
Nice.
So there was this robot, and I wrote a little book on how to program it and stuff, but this thing was powerful. Like, it would just like, you'd program it wrong or tell it to basically like move beyond its table that it was mounted to, and it would just crush its claw like into the table so hard, and you'd hit the emergency stop, and the thing would just kind of go, and you'd have to then wrestle it back into its rest position and restart it and just reboot it from the beginning. It was kind of intense.
Sounds
But
like a fun project.
it was
That
cool.
Like a fun little tech lab.
Yeah, no, the tech lab had some really cool stuff, and it had like video editing. It was the first time I got to play with Photoshop and all kinds of stuff like that. It was really cool. Unfortunately, budget cuts and things like that, so it got rolled in with shop. So then there was one teacher after a while where they were in between the two. So then essentially somebody was either middle school kids were not being watched while they used power tools, or with the expensive at the time equipment.
So the program got cut.
So, well, no, there was a teacher going back and forth, but of course he's always going to be like hanging out with all the gangster kids in the shop, because they would just chuck.
Because those are the only kids that take shop.
No, it was both. Like, you could just decide to do whatever, but like typically it'd be like the gangsterish kind of kids over in the shop area, and then all the white kids and stuff.
Teacher,
like,
I made a prison shake,
Kind of. I mean,
so my big brother taught me.
I mean,
how to make.
there were a lot of bats made on the lathe, and like there were some kids that put out some really cool stuff, but the rest of them would just kind of, they'd turn on the table saw and chuck bits of wood at it, and then they would go boing, and fly off at 90 miles an hour against the back wall, and like destroy old projects that are way up in the rafters and stuff that have been there for 20 years or whatever.
Good old middle school shop.
Yeah, so the teacher had to kind of keep a lid on that situation. So then everybody would just go over, and this was like the first time anybody had this was the first place I ever was on internet that wasn't dial-up. So people were, and this was in the heyday of Napster. So people were just downloading the shit out of music, just the whole time. We're burning through CDs and stuff.
What middle school did you go to, man? Like,
Roosevelt?
Fucking A. You guys had like the hookup.
No, this thing was cool. I think
I went to a rich middle school, but
I think Sandia Labs paid for a good part of it or something, or it was a grant. I don't know. It was cool. I mean, everything else in the school was falling apart and shitty, but the tech lab was cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was a good investment. I mean, and we had a digital camera. This is back when digital cameras took like floppy disks in the back. You could take like 4 or 5 shitty, like low resolution photos. I mean,
that's
if you could take that,
stuff,
you could take that on, and what was like a floppy disk, like 1.5 megabytes or something like that.
That sounds about right.
So you could take 5 photos on that. So they're shitty photos, and but it was digital, and we had Photoshop and all this stuff.
The thing about floppy disk, though, they had that little metal strip that you could pull back, and there was still like a piece of film there. You know? So it's like kind of like faux digital, not quite there.
Yeah, I mean it was. I
used to fuck with people.
They had zip drives. Did you ever run into zip drives? They didn't last long. There were zip drives and jazz drives. So a zip drive was 100 megabyte, like, thick floppy disk. And then jazz drives were even bigger, but they held like a gig. They were.
I never encountered that size of storage space back when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't
these
encounter
things
that
were
until like high school.
Yeah, these things were pretty advanced for their time, but I think both of those died pretty quickly when they started making CDs cheap.
I saw this meme of this man going up to this little kid, and he's holding a floppy disk, and he's like, "Hey kid, do you know what this is?" He's like, "Oh, cool, you made a 3D model of the save icon."
Yeah. No, I know. When are they going to update that shit?
Right?
I mean, I guess they would have to come up with a whole new, I don't know.
Yeah, there's people that don't even know what that is.
Yeah. I mean,
you're like, "Oh, that's just
the
how you
save
save
icon," but maybe it's time that we had like a squiggly line or something for save.
You need to conceptualize save and then make that into an icon.
Yeah.
Sounds like a graphics project.
It does.
Anyway,
I'm sure it's been done by some people who are really talented, and they just got shot down because everybody likes their square.
Like, dude, you're trying to reinvent the wheel. Fuck it.
Yeah, like, that's just going to confuse people for a couple months.
Especially your grandma.
Yeah, and they don't want to. Yeah, because the only people who are not going to catch on with that are going to be the most likely to call tech support, and nobody involved with software development or whatever wants to be fielding calls where it's just like, I can't save.
Excuse me, is the internet open on Martin Luther King Day?
Yeah, if I press this squiggle, how do I know it's saved if I can't? Yeah.
Anyway, I think this robotic arm from Kickstarter is gonna be a big hit with the porn industry, though.
Really?
Yeah.
How so? You think it's gonna jack people off?
Yeah. Whereas I think you were thinking about the next iteration, maybe the third iteration,
Yeah,
where
I
the
always
robot
am.
is on like a track or some kind of
Yeah. Well,
like
just imagine you pour your slab,
yeah.
and then the robot just rolls around, and
It just
essentially it's like,
scans the slab.
well, and it's like it would know,
Well, you upload
you
the drawings to it.
yeah, and then well, all that is uploaded into it, and you basically all you'd have to do is either it could use GPS, or even if it that was too rough, you could have
Use
you could have
laser scanners.
yeah you could have
Steve.
you could
Use laser
essentially
measurements.
yeah
We're going with precision here.
well you could have a single point like in the middle or somewhere where the robot knows where it is, and
Yeah.
that's its reference point, and it can always be tracking that from where it is, or 2 points for triangulation or whatever, and then it's just rolling around on the slab building stuff, and
Yeah.
and it could have a camera with essentially not facial recognition, but shape
Geometrical
yeah,
recognition.
shape recognition, so
Yeah.
it could identify the brick, pick it up the right way, and all you would have to do is truck in a pallet of bricks at a time to a designated area where it knows to go look for them, and then it just, Bob's your uncle. It puts it all together. I think the
So-
application of mortar would be a little more difficult than actually anything.
Well, it'd have to have like another armature,
Yeah,
But so
but I know they've done something like that. There was
I've seen it
a
before.
winery in France, and then
Yeah.
they created like a really cool pattern with it. But this, but that seemed like a very expensive thing. What if we just made, and not that I want to like put people out of
economies of scale.
yeah,
but-
I mean, not that I want to like put more people who do good, work and work with their hands or whatever out of jobs, but the way things are, I think that would be a boost to the building industry. I mean, as long as those kind of as long as whatever kind of savings you got didn't necessarily go just immediately to the top, you would have to make, I don't know,
Well, they
make
go towards the
houses,
technology.
make higher, well, yeah, they would, but I feel like construction crews cost a lot.
Yeah.
And if you had this robot, I mean, it's fairly simple. Why would it cost a lot to maintain?
So I understand where you're coming from, and the notion where we could build cheaply, we could build rapidly without the interference of humans and their mistakes. But you're going to be losing the human aspect.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, a building is for humans.
Right.
And, maybe the way that a structure is put together is influenced by that person that's putting it together.
Well,
and it adds to the quality of space because it's more human. It's made by humans for humans. What if it's made by robots for humans? That's a little strange. I don't think it's really been done before. I'm curious to see how that experiment would work out. And
I mean, I
what
think
kind of psychological effects it have on the space.
I think that it would actually be beneficial in America because we have such a low quality of construction, like in general. I mean, of course, if we wanted to build, if money's no object, you can have the best people build something amazing, and it'll be of superior quality, whatever. But the average house, I'm thinking more on the average house.
Okay.
Like, so we've moved to, this thing can build a good high quality house out of a high quality material and not run into all the errors that humans have. And I will say that it's those errors that
I guess I haven't experienced such high quality design as you have.
well, I mean, the craft wise, like
Yeah.
every building I saw, I mean, not every, but 99% of every building new, and I'm just talking about new construction too, that I saw built in Europe and whatever they just treat it differently. They have their construction workers are more craft based,
Yeah.
they just kind of, everything comes out right. I think if we had that situation here, I would not advocate for a robot building a building. But because we have such shitty craft, and what are we losing? Nothing. I mean, half the stuff that we build in this country is just so shitty anyway that I really don't think a robot, especially
Maybe
when it
on the
comes to
mass
like
scale,
housing
when you come
and
to economies of scale, and when it's the suburban sprawl, then I
yeah.
think you'd be adding to that sprawl even more so by having this automated process.
But I don't necessarily think so. I mean, the whole world, especially with the disparity of, wealth and poverty growing, I think we need cheaper housing, but we don't need shittier housing. And that's the problem is what I would be looking to do with it would be create cheap housing that is of high quality. And I just don't think you can do that with our current techniques.
Yeah.
Like this thing would be able to essentially work day and night, get things done,
laying bricks down,
laying bricks, doing whatever. Yeah,
whatever.
and and the thing is you could make the design so precise because it's just going to follow. Essentially it'd be 3D printing your building, but in a very roundabout sort of way. So you would have everything essentially built into it, and you could then have the plumber show up, after, and there's already like a hole or like a conduit space, and he just puts it in, and then the next day the electrician comes in and he puts his wires into the conduit that's built in or whatever, and then on the third day the interior person or robot comes in and just finishes everything, covers it up or whatever, and then you have
the grand opening and the champagne flowing.
Yeah, I mean, more or less.
But my experience, and I guess this just goes on because this is a traditional building method, is with every building is designed to precision. Every building has these set of floor plans and drawings that are absolutely precise. This door goes here, 3 inches from that space, from this stud or whatever, and that's where it needs to go. That's where it was designed. Right. Every building is designed that way, but how many buildings have addendums? How many buildings need to go and these are the revisions that we had to make during the construction process because something wasn't really working out.
Right. But I think that with this, it goes hand in hand with BIM and things like that, so that those conflicts are eliminated before they happen.
I think it'll require a hell of an intelligent operating system and BIM coordination or translation from the BIM drawing model to the actual robot,
Right.
Because what if it encounters some, site condition that there is a contingency?
Sure.
Where it has to calculate. And does the construction process halt? Because robot 32 came into an error. Wait 12 hours for engineer to show up.
Right.
Or
no, and I do think that this would not be a one size fits all kind of thing, but just like there's different levels of contractors, you want air engineering and handling your structure on a skyscraper. This robot is not going to replace that. This, there's going to always be room for craftsmen, and I don't think that this would be threatening to them at all because it's not taking away their job. It's not taking away what they're doing. It can't at this point, and probably wouldn't be able to do what they do. So it's really just kind of cutting out that really, I guess what this would do is it would replace the bottom of the barrel kind of, mass produced.
Yeah, instead of hey, here's my cheapest crew, they'll win the bid.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I have a bunch of robots. They're not really tested yet, but we'll do it cheaper. Okay.
Well, I mean, you'd have to do a test first, but then think about it, what if you had something like this set up for, Habitat for Humanity, or for something like, in New Orleans they did the Make It Right thing with Brad Pitt, and he built all those houses and stuff for people.
And he took his shirt off.
Yeah, he hammered up some shit in the heat or whatever. These could be, when you have a disaster or something like that somewhere, and we all know that, because of global warming, those kind of weather events and disasters are only going to get
sort of thing.
Yeah, if you believe that horse shit. I don't. No. So we're going to have a need for rebuilding areas and doing it, and a lot of times it's going to hit disproportionately affect poorer people.
Yeah.
And, say you have a community of, 10,000 people, that was just basically destroyed, and they need to rebuild or whatever. And out of that, you might have 1, 2 contracting firms.
Yeah.
They can't handle that kind of thing, and you're moving people in. So that's incredibly expensive. This, essentially, you move a handful of people in,
in a fraction of the time.
And then a bunch of robots who don't give a shit, who can work 24 hours a day. And you basically have people overseeing the construction. You probably have a mechanic kind of person who would repair and not necessarily, you don't need 1 for 1. So you could have an entire company with like 1 mechanic, essentially.
Once you get the ball rolling.
Yeah, more or less. But essentially, so it could kind of just create a whole different way
niche and industry.
Yeah.
See, I think that's a great idea, and who else to test out your radical idea than the poor? But
poor people with no options because of a disaster. Yeah,
well,
exactly.
When you're up against the wall.
Well, people are suing Brad Pitt for his Make It Right thing because, like, one of the materials that he built the house with, I guess it was this engineered wood or something like that, and it's like failing. And thanks, Brad Pitt. Thanks for the free house, but by the way, I'm suing you because this one thing is rotting. It's like kind of,
You're like, dude, come on! I built that house for $100. Come on.
More, I don't know. I saw some of those. They looked not cheap.
Nice. Right
yeah, they looked, and each of them were engineered, and they're green, and no VOCs and all this kind of like very high ideal.
It's LEED. All right, it's not, but whatever.
No VOCs, like no volatile organic compounds.
LEED.
And what?
It's part of the LEED.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
I'm sure.
But my concern is we're all used to seeing men or humans, whatever, go out to the job site. They park their trucks, do their thing.
You sexist.
Yes, I am. Women, you
Can't
are a
swing a
small fraction of all construction workers. Okay, that is fact. Anyway, we're used to seeing them.
So, wow, that was loud.
That was lovely. Just very appropriate.
Yeah, sorry.
No, don't apologize. But what is the overall feeling and effect on a population? Considering disaster relief, you have an entire population that's been displaced, and they're just kind of in their little tent cities watching their neighborhood get rebuilt.
No, but that's the thing. They're displaced. Put them on the hill away from it so they don't see it.
Sure. But where they're used to seeing men go out and build their home, now they're seeing a fleet of trucks that are delivering robots, and these robots are just going out and then just putting shit together.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that's going to add like a sense of coldness to their new home?
Most definitely.
A sense of desensitization where like, well, that's not really mine, That's just something that is kind of fake and put together and engineered in the most hostile way possible.
To me, I guess I'm looking more at the idea of a better quality
at a very
product.
Practical sense.
Well, I mean, I think that a majority of the houses, especially suburban houses that people live in, are the coldest, grossest kind of buildings available. I mean, they're built as cheaply as possible, as big as possible, and then just kind of sold at a fraction. It's just
the precedent would be our mobile homes, or trailer homes, whatever the fuck you want to call them.
Those are still built by people. This would be a different construction process, but only because we're just sort of eliminating. It's kind of like when Henry Ford started making cars on an assembly line versus handcrafted. At the time, you could argue that a handmade car was better, but it had a lot of problems. Parts weren't interchangeable. You had all these, there were all these drawbacks, and the big thing is, he started mass producing them, then everybody could afford them. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because,
I love
houses are usually the most expensive thing people buy. What if the price of houses was cut in half? How would that change things? I don't know. I mean, would it make people want bigger houses? Would they? Because land would still cost expensive. A certain amount,
and it'd even be more expensive if people had more houses.
Right.
But what you're trying to equate is a machine and a space for living. you know, and there are the architects that claimed a machine for living.
Well,
My favorite,
mm-hmm.
Le Corbusier. However, we don't live in machines. Yes, we live in spaces that require machines in order for our comfort level to be increased and for our quality of life to be increased. But you don't need machines to live comfortably.
No, you don't. But I
Because
think
that's the only way we've lived for the past 150 years,
right.
if that.
But I think increasingly, we are living in more. Everything about our lives is becoming kind of more hemmed in. Everything is kind of programmed.
Yeah.
You do a certain thing at a certain time and this and that. And everything is kind of all coming together and being more connected and intertwined with everything. And I don't really see why how your house is constructed necessarily has anything to do with how it's designed.
Hmm.
So, because the idea in my mind is that you wouldn't be designing, the robot, the construction method wouldn't be what limits your design. It would be kind of the other way around. Like the material limits your design. So if you're building out of brick, there's only certain things you can do out of brick. The only thing is with this robot, you have such precision that you could take that to a whole new level. Or if it was extruding concrete or something, then you could essentially do everything that you do with concrete, but
Yeah.
it's with a robot, and it's so precise, ideally, if the system is working right, that you don't have to worry so much about incredibly complex things, because what you can do is you can take a standard platform, you can take your robot, you can take your software, you can do a test and say, okay, I want to do an arch out of this brick and I want it to be this size or whatever. Can the robot do it? It does it and it works. That's a test, and that robot can do that with the same material anywhere.
Yeah.
So you're basically you're finding out, limitations on that, and then of course when you run into that limitation, instead of saying, "Oh, for this project, we just can't do it." Now you have presumably companies that would build these robots, and they'd say, "Okay, well, we're trying to do something to make the next version better. So now it can do this and it has this feature, or people have been asking for this." So, it becomes more of like a software development. So I think that it would get to the point where it'd be so advanced that you could have, of course there'd be specialized robots for different materials and things, but essentially it would get to the point where it would increase a designer's flexibility and ability to do things, and and everything would be so. I mean, I don't like the idea of things being really dialed in to the point where the cost of every move you make, because then, when they say like, oh, if you add a corner, it's $1,000. So, that's like kind of a shorthand in,
Bargain design.
yeah, in sprawling development, they've got it down to a science so much that they know that if you put a bump out for a window, it's an extra $1,000, so they just don't do it. Well, in this, it would be more of a situation where it's like, well, what can you're talking to a client and you're saying, well, what can you afford? Okay, then we can do this, and we know ahead of time that it's going to cost about this much. Of course, there's always, weather delays, or there's whatever, the concrete can't dry in certain temperature or
Sure.
whatever.
So those are your physical
so
limitations.
there are, there's still going to be limitations, but essentially, you know ahead of time what can and can't be done, and the things that can't be done, those problems can be solved.
Yeah. See, and I totally feel and respect the idea that you're pitching right now, because I think it's perfect, because I think it'll be, how else do we create these beautiful masterpieces? Like, how quickly could Gaudi paint his, Sagrada Familia church? That's what it's called, right?
Mm-hmm.
He could have built it in fucking a couple years instead of how many years? 150 or something like that we're going on now?
Yeah, I mean, it's ongoing.
But I respect your idea, because it's the idealized idea. But
right.
It'll be abused, and it'll
Right.
just lead to more copy-paste architecture.
I agree, but I don't necessarily think that it would be taking away from anything but the copy-paste architecture that's being done now. I mean, most people live in copy-paste buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and they're shitty buildings because they're copy-paste and they're cheap and they're awful. What if they just had a high quality of construction, but they were still copy-paste? I think that that's still a net gain. And what it would do is, I mean, there's always going to be people who want better things. They want something
but do people
that's
really
personal.
want that? Like,
yes.
And you say that it'll make better.
I mean,
but what's the cost benefit to? Well, we got all our corners to match up perfectly, but it's still the same stucco construction. Because structure is cheap.
Stucco.
Well, what if some contractor picks up your idea and applies it towards that?
And they would, and it probably would be great for them. And
he's like, I don't need to hire these Mexicans anymore. Yeah, fuck that shit.
Depending on the cost of a robot, maybe people just buy their own robot.
Ooh, I like that.
Maybe they, because maybe people then are saying, okay, well, this robot costs $20,000. It'll save $40,000 off my total construction.
Yeah.
Maybe I buy it, and then when I'm done, I sell it or whatever. I don't know. I mean, of course,
and of
course, if there was that kind of thing, then businesses that owned them, they'd be able to offer cheaper deals. Whatever. The economics would be the hard part. But I mean, there's always going to be people, regardless of how a building could be built, there are always going to be people who say, well, I don't want what everybody else has. I want something better. I want something more refined. So I don't think that the way that it's created necessarily cuts into that. So you're going to have shitty architecture. You're going to have shitty buildings. You're going to have thoughtless spaces. But that's not necessarily the fault of how it was made. So this, in theory, would just...
It's refining the process.
It would... I only see in my mind, and I'm sure I'm, just like you said, thinking of it in idealized a way. I only see it as eliminating just poor quality construction.
No, totally. And I'm just playing devil's advocate to tell you
the truth. Of course.
Well. But I think we need to remember Skynet and the imminent threat of technology wanting to take over.
Do you really believe that?
No.
Okay.
Because, we have the tools to disable their mechanisms. We know the basic laws of quantum mechanics in order to deactivate electrical circuits. And,
yeah. I mean, I've always thought about, what if computers became self-aware and this and that. I think that wanting to destroy things is an emotional response to scarcity, not a cognitive response.
Okay.
So a computer, I think, that was intelligent and had resources and stuff wouldn't immediately think, okay, eliminate others. It would see the bigger picture. It would say, okay, well, scarcity is a threat to us. Because isn't that like one of the...
Survival mode?
Yeah, well, isn't that like kind of one of the things about, it takes over and destroys us because we're a threat or to ourselves or some shit?
To ourselves,
I can't remember
we're a threat to resources.
Right.
And
so,
we could be harnessed as an energy source.
Right, or whatever. So essentially there's a problem that humanity presents, and generally it's a competitive thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think a computer, rather than saying just eliminate them, maybe it would just see it as a problem to be solved and then
solve
the problem.
The thing is that I think, back to the psychological perspective, is that we see computers as being so cold and dry and not having that warmth quality about it. I think the person that's able to...
Have you ever talked to Siri?
No.
She's got some saucy new lines.
I do Android. No. I do Android.
Well, yeah, I know. I just got my iPad thing, so...
Yeah.
She has, like, it's funny because you can tell, like, the things that are just being kind of put together from words where it's like, let me look that up for you. But then there's, like, like, what are you wearing, Siri? And she'll say something, and it's, like, recorded, and it's a single voice.
It's a little more sensual.
It's a lot. Like, I noticed that today. I was just like, it's so sensual. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if she'll...
Does your iPad do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think... Let's see. What are you wearing?
You have the wrong personal assistant.
Like, that wasn't all, you have the wrong personal assistant. It's just...
No, her voice has gotten less automatron.
Yeah, and it's become more, like, flirty and saucy and stuff. And I mean, I think that's... Definitely on purpose, because Apple wants
sure
them.
Apple and Google has like
they want you to create like an
team.
Emotional connection with your device. I mean that you want to.
Well, that's
love
going
it.
back to the psychology of objects and the
Right.
psychology of our
These
computers.
But these computers are being taught not to hate us, but to love us.
and to learn how to work with us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just if all of a sudden they became self-aware, I think it would be much more likely that they would just do nice things.
But I think it's interesting that the initial response for sci-fi writers and authors and futurists back when computers first came out was this hostile future.
Yeah.
This hostile takeover.
Well, because people
because
they're
they're scared.
of
Course,
yeah,
and we're afraid of the unknown.
Well, exactly. It's unknown, and it's so easy to be afraid of it, and it's easy to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
It's difficult, and I think that
And the whole conspiracy
this is,
theorists.
Yeah.
Ski.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's very makes me think of this too. Is that movie Her?
Oh, dude, I kind of want to watch that.
I kind of want to see it too, but essentially, it's a robot or something. I mean, from what I gather, I haven't really read any reviews because I don't like to read reviews of movies that I might watch. And I know I'll see it whether it's on Netflix or whatever.
See, I love Joaquin Phoenix, and the idea of like falling in love with your computer intrigues
but the computer,
me,
but the computer falls in love back. I
know.
think. So,
I know.
I think that's a more realistic
Plus
picture.
it speaks like Scarlett Johansson.
Sure.
So.
I mean, I think that's a much more realistic picture of what technology would do because we tailor these things to be for us and take on those. So it would be as close to mimicking intelligence, but it would be an idealized version. And then it makes that leap or something happens where it becomes alive, essentially. Yeah. So why would it just get rid of every bit of its past and everything that led it to that point? And I mean, I could see it being nice at first and then slowly becoming evil, but that's a whole different story.
But I think this beginning of being this paranoia towards computers and these objects that we're interacting with gave us kind of a warning or something to look out for. And that's why we've installed friendliness into operating systems and Siri and whatnot.
Yeah.
It makes me think of the South Park episode with the shake weight.
Where it tells her she's attractive and everything like that. You're so beautiful.
Tell me more about your annoying friends.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about those women you don't like at work. Yeah.
Here is some cooling fluid.
Anyway.
I can't wait for the YouTube image. Anyway.
Of the
shake weight.
Oh.
I'm sure you'll find a good one.
Yeah, possibly.
So, as you were saying that these robots and computers, systems, learn about their environment, learn about their user, and then adapt. So how would this industrial robot arm for your desk learn and adapt? I notice you're watching porn again, Steve.
What? Oh.
The robot would talk back to you.
I was like, I did not leave any browsers open with porn on. I have some manners at least.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know that it's really, I mean, at this point it's kind of like an arm. It doesn't really, it's not really it's a mechanical device.
It's pretty basic.
It's a robot, but it has no interface with human. Like, that's the thing about this is there's no real human interface with it.
Sure. But what you're saying is that all these devices are programmed to learn from our habits and routines. Mm-hmm. But what if they learn too much and learn about our hateful habits and our vengeful and emotional habits that are negative?
Maybe they would be like dogs then, like there are no bad dogs, there are just bad dog owners. So, you'd have a robot and it'd come out of the package just real nice, but then, it gets a shitty owner, it's going to start acting shitty because that's how it is. So you have, there'll be all kinds of like ghetto fools down at the park, at the robot park. And they'll have a robot named Marijuana, and they'll be like, "Come here," and then it'll just like maul the shit out of somebody else's robot, and they'll be like, "Oh, okay," and be like, "I gotta go to the nicer neighborhood when I take my robot for a walk or
Definitely.
whatever." Somebody's quadcopter just comes and just fucking wrecks you. Yeah.
That's a funny way to put it. That's a cool way to put it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it could go both ways.
I like that way because then you don't fear it. You're not like, oh my god, this is this cold mechanical object, but it's just really this useful tool. Not to say that dogs are tools or anything like that, but
they can be.
Well, they're there to love.
They're working animals. They have jobs sometimes.
Sniffing out cocaine.
Yeah.
At the border.
Yeah.
I really want to incorporate robots more into my life and career and lifestyle. So.
Did you get naked?
No. I don't know why that's important. I don't know why I felt impulse control. That's something I want to talk about later.
Maybe you could program your robot to control your impulses.
Maybe, but
so I know we touched on some architecture on this episode.
Yeah.
I came across an old Bernard Tschumi poster.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of poster?
The only way to truly understand architecture is to commit a murder in front of it. It's this old black and white picture with this guy standing at a window, and it looks like he's pushing someone out of the window. And then there's really nice, architectural font, probably Helvetica or whatever, saying, the only way to truly appreciate architecture is by committing a murder. And I guess I just wanted to get your thoughts off of this avant-garde type of...
This one?
Let me see.
Where he's pushing a guy out the window?
Yeah, totally. That's the
Okay.
one.
Yeah, I never...
Throw it onto the big screen over here. Duplicate the tab or whatever.
And boom.
Yeah.
Hey, that kind of...
To really appreciate architecture, you may even need to commit a murder. Architecture is defined by the actions it witnesses as much as by the enclosures of its walls. Murder in the streets differs from murder in the cathedral, in the same way as love in the streets differs from street of love. Radically.
I mean, what's your question again? Because I agree with what's written there.
Really? You agree
well,
with that?
I mean, I think
like
the headline doesn't really, out of context, doesn't quite really make sense. But the part where he says a murder in the streets differs from a murder in the cathedral.
No, that's really quite lovely.
That's
really quite lovely.
That's the real quote in my mind.
But why do you need this fucking look at me, like this cry of attention, that you need to use the word murder and use that radical description and image just to convey your idea? And I'm like, dude, chill the fuck out.
Well,
right?
I think it's to get disinterested people interested.
I think it's to make...
And it's to reach an audience who isn't listening.
Disinterested people interested?
No, it's to reach it's shock value. I mean,
exactly.
And
that's
to
all
reach,
it is.
but
it's
well,
this fucking...
but there's a good idea behind. I mean, where shot, yeah, because I mean, he's making a point, and he wants to make this point to not just architects. He wants to make it to everybody. So he has to kind of make it grab you, and essentially posterize it. They can make it something that can grab people's attention, draw them in, and then when they read the caption, they can get to the meat of the issue and be like, oh yeah, that does mean something. So architecture does mean something. So in this roundabout way, you've drawn people in who have never really thought about that or held that value, because a lot of people are like, why would I hire an architect? I just want, a giant kitchen and floor space or whatever. Sure. I want a big, I just want square footage, He's trying to reach that audience in a way that they can understand, and not just saying like, oh, because murder.
But this is
everybody
also
can
a
understand,
filtering device, like you're gonna only really attract the more artistic type of insurance clients and maybe the more radical clients. But why do you need to make reference to murder? You mentioned shock value.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, in this case.
When was this made? I want to say, it's maybe like in the 60s or something. It even says right there.
It says 1976.
Okay.
You're focusing on the murder part.
Yes.
Because it goes on to say, in the same way as love in the streets differs from...
that's just contrast,
Yeah. I think everybody has feelings about murder and love, and not everybody has feelings about architecture. So you have to jump on that. And yeah, it's radical, but that's what Tschumi was doing, Whoa, holy shit. He was being a radical for his time, and, he was thinking about things in a different way, and he's trying to reach audiences with his writing, and, that's what you got to do, is you have to, I'm grasping for the right word, but you have to
make yourself stand out in this way, and I just think he sells himself cheaply by using such graphic imagery. But not imagery, but phrasing. I totally think he could have done it a little bit more elegantly. because
read.
your book, Architecture and Disjunction, that you have right here in your library, is a direct reflection of this poster right here.
And I will say that this gets you engaged. Then you pick up his books and you read what he's saying, and it puts it in a more eloquent, in-depth, just laid out very logically and makes sense and stuff. But you got to grab people who aren't interested and make them think about it.
Science experiment or architecture experiment. Print out 50 of these and put them around Albuquerque.
How would we get any data back?
Cameras?
Robot?
Yes. Well, I just saw this poster. I saw this poster again recently, and when I was immersed in architecture, I didn't really think much of it. And now that I saw it again, not in the full force architecture mode, it made me feel a little bit differently than before.
So more,
I guess, more critical and more, I don't know, more pessimistic, and maybe I didn't appreciate his poster as much as the way that you were describing it.
Maybe what it was though is you were seeing it the way that more like what the public finds, because when you're in architecture school, you're just kind of eating it up, and it's like, oh, Shumi's an authority. I should really take it in, and you look at everything kind of in a positive way in that way, and you're outside of it and you're like, well, I have different experiences in the world now.
Shumi's good,
and
Shumi's
and
perfect,
I have different viewpoints, and it's not just about architecture and design, so maybe I don't. So what you started to question was his method, not necessarily his message.
Not at all, because the caption down below is actually quite beautiful.
But it's too long. You need a something like a punch in the face to get people to just read something quickly and get into it.
And that's why I hate
it's
psychology
why there's
of
headlines.
salesmanship.
Yeah, well, and it's why there's headlines on you go to BBC or Al Jazeera, Huffington Post, or Fox News, wherever you get your news, and there's a headline that's meant to grab your attention and say,
100,000 people displaced from eating donuts today.
Right. You need something that sort of sums up your idea without giving it away, because then people are like, well, why the fuck did I even bother reading it? When you can condense it into a one thing. So he's giving you a little punch that says, check this out, and then you read further and you understand something bigger. So I think you need to look at it from that perspective, and I think from that perspective it's incredibly effective.
Yeah. No, the pure tactics that were used here in design are, like you said, completely effective. It grabbed my attention, I don't know about the contrast.
I mean,
I don't know if you could really sense that the man in the window's throwing the other man out.
That's a woman in the window.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was just going to say that, like, you see her, I think it's pretty beautifully composed. I mean, obviously it's like ancient Photoshop, like the silhouette of the guy, you can kind of see his hand.
Wait. In order for this to be a true, genuine poster, he had to kill someone.
Shumi, maybe he did.
I think he did. Because Shumi is that fucking kind of guy.
Radical. I mean, he was a radical. Sort of.
Is this the same time as when Delirious New York came out? No? When did that come out? 80s?
I don't know.
Maybe?
I forget.
Okay.
Something like that.
Sure.
I mean, I would say not after the early 90s.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, when I read it, it didn't really...
Did you read the whole thing?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Fuck. I only read like a chapter or two and like, ooh, pretty picture.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it kind of... For being so popular in, the architectural world, like, I don't really think it deserves that much credit, Like, I know, I'm saying bad things about Koolhaas,
keep on
and
going,
he's my guy, but
keep on going.
Understand the history of New York City, and, it has implications on density, and it can inform your thoughts on
Hey, you have
urbanity.
That one too. Right on.
What?
Delirious New York.
Yeah.
Dude, when I first came across that book, I'm like, well, I think we need to create a Delirious Albuquerque, a Delirious Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Like,
well, there's so much of that, and it doesn't make sense in my mind. I think I'd be a better designer in a urban environment for
Because that
dense,
stimulus.
a very dense urban environment, and it opens your mind in a lot of ways to understanding sight, doing sight analysis, kind of stuff like that. It really taught me a lot more than doing sight analysis in school ever did.
Yeah, it's just hard to fish,
but
for a good.
It doesn't, It's a great book.
Fuck yeah.
But I don't think it necessarily deserves the place it has in like everybody reads Delirious New York.
Like how everything is good, he did it because no one else had done it before.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean he just, in typical Rem Koolhaas fashion, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing, and overdoing,
in that graphic
and
style,
overdoing. Yeah.
And in this radical style too.
Absolutely.
And then Rem Koolhaas had his own type of representational tactics and methods. Sorry, you mentioned Rem Koolhaas, and I have this Dutch professor who is total Koolhaas.
Really?
But he wears like all leather. It's like leather.
That's not very cool, huh?
No. But... He super skinny. He has this leather hat that he wears backwards. And you need to pull up his website so you just see how weird it is. He has this document that he wrote up saying that we should be against PowerPoint. And he has this whole philosophy of why PowerPoint is ruining presentations.
I agree with him to a degree.
And he has all this communist propaganda of like Stalin with
awesome.
with a crowd of people just behind him, and he's like, "Together, comrades, we will rid ourselves of PowerPoint."
So what's his preferred method?
I don't know. Go to learn.unm.edu. So check out his fucking website.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Can we link this?
Yeah, totally.
Holy shit.
For some reason, he has the original plans to the building. Like, dude, he just seems like a cool guy. He, does theoretical fluid dynamics.
Dude, this might be kind of the sweetest thing I've seen in a
Steve,
long
I
time.
knew you would appreciate this guy.
I mean, it's got to be the shittiest website. I'm a little inspired. Maybe we should have our own. I mean, we need our own website so that we can get this thing onto the Apple
PowerPoint
podcast
dumbs
bit.
Down the presentation.
I like how it's just basically a PowerPoint and PDF. Here, I'll throw it up on the screen.
Wait, keep on scrolling down and just read the main points that he made. Does PowerPoint make you stupid? Format emphasized over content. He just really, I don't know, man. I think this is just perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that, it's not a designer that's doing this. It's, somebody who's fully entrenched in the PowerPoint world. It's business and engineers all use PowerPoint so much, and it's just...
Well, he's advocating open office, Corel? I don't know what the fuck.
I don't know. I know Corel Draw is like a shitty, or they have like a shitty version of Photoshop that sucks.
Power corrupts. PowerPoint corrupts pointlessly.
Oh man, I think I would like this guy.
Yeah. His disclaimer is perfect.
Is 100% PowerPoint free, boycott proprietary formats and illegal software monopolies. Yeah, so this disclaimer is a little more telling. I think that is really the meat of the issue is, he feels wronged by PowerPoint. He feels wronged by Microsoft and their shit, which I can understand. I mean, I've never had more problems with like software licensing and stuff like that than with Microsoft.
Yeah.
You buy something and then it's like not activated and you have to go through all their bullshit just to get to it. I don't know. Well, it happened to me recently, but
maybe we need
Google came to the rescue with Google Docs and all their stuff. Everything Google makes, it's free and it's easier and you can whatever.
Fucking Bill Gates.
I love Google. They're gonna
lamp.
I was talking about this with my coworkers the other day. It's just like when that day comes where Google just decides to like
take over the world.
Well, just like exert the power that they have. Just guys.
Well, just how the president has the red button. Yeah. They have the red button virus. They just go.
Well, just imagine this, Joe. Just what if they were just like, we're closing up.
Yeah.
And you're like, what do you mean? Well, we've made enough money and we're done.
Yeah.
Well, who's gonna take over? Nobody. We're gonna stop.
Internet's closed.
Yeah, just like if Google did that, imagine how much that would fuck shit up.
Well, the
Worse,
internet wouldn't
if
be
they
down.
just Well,
The
no,
internet
of
would
course
still
not.
exist, but you
No,
couldn't
but
search for
all the
anything.
Google stuff nothing necessarily would be gone. I mean, obviously, all your Google Docs and everything like that that's
Totally.
stored in the
Your
cloud would be
Gmail,
gone
yeah.
or whatever, in your Gmail or whatever. But I
But all
feel
your
like
passwords
they
and all your accounts that are
they
linked
handle so much
to data.
data and everything that way and it's just they've become such a part of everybody's life. Even if you're like an Apple person or whatever, if Google just stopped, like everything they did, they just closed up, no more, that would fuck shit up. I bet they could like crash the world economy.
Dude, you know how like they have like these like dire circumstances, like short stories or whatever,
No.
like the day that
Ice cream was free.
yes, the day that like Wall Street shuts down, or
Right.
like the day of whatever, the day that Google shuts down.
The day Google stopped.
Yeah,
The Earth stopped.
the Earth stopped moving. Oh my
Yeah.
god! And like that, this podcast should stop.
I think so.
Can we play a little bit of that music that I was listening to?
It's not uploaded in the system.
Oh, all right.
So,
Well,
no. But we could play.
we just need a little goodbye song.
How about this? Yeah.
And we say goodbye.
I don't know if that's appropriate, Mark.
I don't give a shit.